Welcome to Clay Hands. I'm Tash. I am the founder of Clay Hands, but in many ways it feels like it founded me, or found me rather. My initial passion for pottery comes from working in my mom's studio, or growing up in my mom's studio. I'm a third generation potter. My grandmother was a potter, and then my mom was a potter. Or is a potter, and my mom runs a beautiful studio from her home in Hart Bay called Earth Play Studio. And I grew up as part of the whole clay community. I always say I have mud in my blood. And I think as I grew up, I was very involved in the studio, and I used to assist my mom with the classes, but I never really thought it would be something that I would get into. I guess in a way, because it was just part of my world. Like when I was growing up, I used to go to people's houses and be like, but where's your pottery studio? So it was just something I thought everyone else had in their lives. And in a way, I guess I took it for granted. One of my best friends, who was also in our little clay group when we were young, and also learned from my mum, I remember her finishing her degree, and pretty much like on one of her last days, she sat me down on the UCT steps and she was like, Tash, I think I'm going to be a potter. I know I've just spent 3 years studying like humanities or whatever it was, but I think I'm going to be a potter. And I remember that being such a moment for me of being like, oh wow, yeah, that is something we could also choose to do. It just like hadn't occurred to me. So Alila is also a potter now, and it's really beautiful to share the craft with her. We've been friends since we were 3. So there's just beautiful like cross connection between my mom and this sister friend of mine, and my husband also sharing this passion for the craft. And we've all kind of gone on this learning journey in a way together. But I started to take evening classes with my mom in her like adult groups instead of just being like a play group, and realizing like how beautiful it was as a craft and what beautiful things you could make. And then I met my husband, Odon, and he just thought pottery was the bee's knees. And he was like, that's so cool that your mom does pottery. So we actually started going to classes together. We were the youngest people in the class by about 40 years. But it was great to get to know like a whole other world. I love that a pottery class brings people together from different generations in a way that like you don't necessarily get in other crafts or hobbies, because you're all sitting together around one table, and because your hands are busy, the conversation flows and people open up and discuss things. And I think for me, at that point in my life, I was like a young 20-something, and it was just so interesting getting exposed to other people's lives and learning so much from the people in my class. And that's something I've really tried to keep with Clay Hands, that we're a very inclusive space with people from all walks of life. So I think it was a combination of having mud in my blood from my grandmother and my mom, and then my husband being interested in clay, that kind of brought me to opening Clay Hands. Odon and I decided that we would try opening our own evening class for our friends who were interested in pottery. And I think we didn't realize how much work goes into teaching people pottery, because my mom just made it look really easy. So we thought we could just like make our own pots, and our friends could come and just make their pots, and then there were a lot of questions. And so my husband was very good at ignoring the questions, and he just carried on making his little mugs and cups and stuff, and getting on with his craft, and I was very quickly roped into the teaching. So our house is filled with beautiful Odon mugs, but not very many of my pieces, because I've been running the studio for 6 years, and I think my main passion really is for teaching. I love sharing the craft, but it's also, it's a very time-consuming thing running the studio, so it's also been like a constant journey for me to try and find my way into my own practice with clay.